Hi, folks. It is Carla, and I am here today from Rehan's World of Connections with Jason Grant. Jason Grant from the UK and Planet Earth. And we are going to be talking about getting over the fear of asking for money and making us more affluent. This show, as like all my shows, is sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace throughout the world, one conversation at a time. And with that, I'm going to ask Jason to introduce himself, and then we'll get this started. I need to get this started too and do a few things that I explained to Jason. So, Jason, please.
So first of all, thank you very much, Carla, for inviting me to this live stream and a conversation. And we just decided from our souls to talk about the issue or the topic of money. But before we go into that, I would like to introduce a little bit of myself, my life story in a sense, which is not really who I am. We're not our story, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later. But in terms of my story, I was born in a small country of Bosnia back in the early 80s. And in fact, I was born in a country called Yugoslavia, which was a socialist country. And that fell apart in the early 90s and broke up into 6 smaller countries. So I was in war in Bosnia for 3 years and then became a refugee in UK. In fact, I was a refugee in Croatia first for 6 months and then became a refugee in UK. And for 25 years, I've been living in the only country in the world that is called Great, which is Great Britain. And in these 38 years of my earthly years of living, I have learned many, many things about life and collected much wisdom from various older people that I've always hanged around with because I'm a late child. I'm a third child in my family, and my mom always used to my mom always used to joke that I was born to as a like a little carrier of milk and bread to pick up from the shop. You know, that's what she would say. So that was going to be my duty and purpose on this earth. But actually, I realized that my purpose is to redesign humanity. So there's much to be said about, myself growing in socialist regime, then 3 years of war, then coming to effectively what is quite extreme capitalism, and really looking at all of that full circle and thriving in effectively each one of those regimes and circumstances and situations. And even though I'm thriving, I'm looking to make bigger impact, because progress is ultimately, the ultimate measure, and that progress can be, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, creative, linguistic, social, or all of those things combined. So nowadays, what I do and what I specialize in is I coach people through a program that we designed specially. It's a breakthrough program called Fresh Mind, which helps people upgrade their mindsets to have the next level of life, or the next phase of their life happening pretty much now, as opposed to waiting for the next Messiah to show up, and it's like you kind of never have the the next Messiah come too soon, right? It's like we all need more money now, and we all need more happiness now, and we all need better health now, and we all need better connectivity and creativity and so on now. So really, I sometimes say future is all we have, so let's make the most of it now. That's my intro.
When you say, because I've spoken to Captain Future, and also I've spoken to Life Edvinson, I believe, in Sweden. And he talks about the future starting with this very moment. It depends on what we are doing this very moment that carries us into the future. Would you agree with that philosophy?
Absolutely. You know, there is some element of truth to say that, you know, your history determines your future, okay? Or certainly the present moment, which is literally in English language a present, like a gift, okay? That's why it's called a present, because future is a mystery. And yes, yesterday's history, today is the present day. That's why it's a gift. And so what we are doing today is certainly affecting how the future pans out. Another way to look at it, and you know, we can inspect the universe from all sorts of different perspectives, is to say that our minds are always projecting, or our souls are always projecting the future, and we're envisaging that. And then the way the reality works is that it's backwards realizing it. So itself. So if you're fearing the future, or if you're projecting a lack, negativity, scarcity, and all those kind of things, that's what you are going to effectively reflect into your present moment. But if you're projecting abundance, love, positivity, growth, creativity, that's what you will inevitably be focused towards realizing. And certainly it's worked out like that in my life, because in the worst times of the war in Bosnia, where there was, you know, nothing around and it was extreme oppression, I was always projecting a more positive future. And today I have a very positive present day, and I'm still projecting a more positive future going forward. That's it.
Now, you came from Bosnia. Did you come with your parents from Bosnia, or did you come alone?
Yeah, so I came with my parents. We came on a family reunion arrangement. And so I reconnected with my brother and sister here in UK in 95. And I literally couldn't speak any English. We had about 50 pounds, UK pounds, between the three of us. And yeah, came here, the town that I'm originally from is 200,000 people, which we thought was pretty much like the center of the world, you know, the most beautiful, amazing city in the world, because we have our own river and we have a cinema. And what else do you need in the city? Then I came to London, and I was shocked. I spent first month pretty much crying from you know, being under like extreme cultural shock, because like one of the boroughs in London, which there's 33 of, it has got probably population that is double my hometown, of people from all around the world. Name the country, you know, they live here in London.
Wow. So many people that you knew from Bosnia have come to London.
So Bosnia is a tiny little country. It's right now it's something like 4.2 million. But interestingly, and this is probably one in the only way in which Bosnia is similar to Israel, is that its diaspora, or the population that lives outside of Bosnia, is almost bigger than the actual you know, resident population, domestic population. So there's some speculations that there's about 8 million Bosnians living worldwide, first, second, and third generation, all across the globe. But out of those 8 million, there's probably less than 20,000 in UK that we know of. So it's small, but we know each other.
This is rather cool. And you said just recently, I don't know what recently means to you.
Mm-hmm.
You have gained the knowledge that I am capable of earning money. How long? But I also heard you say when you started your business that you've always been successful in business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So explain this to me.
So look, I started my first business in a refugee camp in Croatia, and it happened all by quote unquote coincidence, because when we came into this refugee camp in the middle of nowhere in Croatia, I ended up in a situation where I was effectively project managing this little project of housing these refugees in what were like the containers that builders typically live in on building sites. And so I worked with the UN battalion, the soldiers from UN. I was 14 at the time. I worked with them because I could speak like 1 or 2 English words, from like the movies that I was watching, all this kind of Hollywood stuff. So I'd pick up 1 or 2 words. But the Nepalese UN battalion that was working in that refugee camp, they couldn't speak in any English anyway. So me speaking 2 words of English to them didn't help much. But we sort of like sign languaged our way through. And so when we sorted out these refugees into these containers in this refugee camp, they then came up to me and they said, "Oh, you speak English." Okay, this was their projection onto me. And they said, "Here is money. Okay, go and buy us some cigarettes." Okay, because you realize that refugees, as soon as they, these people are in heavy duty shock from leaving their country and not knowing where they are, the first thing they want and need is a bit of soothing, which comes in the form of cigarettes. So then I was handling this money, that the refugees gave me. And, we're in the middle of nowhere in the refugee camp. And I was supposed to source cigarettes for these people. So I went to one of the Nepalese battalion soldiers and I said to him, cigarettes, it's like kind of the same word in every language, I think. And he looked at me sort of in a sort of blank stare. And I sort of gave him this money, it's like money, cigarettes, and he took the money and then went away. And I thought, well, I just got robbed by a Nepalese soldier from UN, because he just took my money and went and didn't say anything. And then he came back with a whole kind of arms full of cigarettes of all kinds, some that we've never even seen, like Marlboro and so on, and gave me money back. I think he changed my German Deutschmarks into dollars. So for the first time in my life, I was holding a wad of dollars and then a wad of cigarettes. And yeah, so then I gave those cigarettes away to the refugees, and they loved me forever because I sourced them cigarettes that they've never even seen, like Marlboro, and they were smoking Marlboro in this refugee camp, and they were extremely happy. And I had dollars and some cigarettes left over. So I basically became a cigarette dealer at the age of 14 in the middle of nowhere in the refugee camp. But it gave me a very big lesson, which is that you can make money absolutely anywhere, should you be willing to tune into what's going on. And should you be willing to understand what is the supply and demand within the given market space or marketplace, and everywhere there you are is a marketplace. The entire globe is one giant marketplace. And today, with all this kind of connectivity, Facebook, live streaming tools, and all sorts of things, we can be connected from London to Washington to Pakistan to Israel to India, China, and so on. And it's like this. So, yeah.
How fascinating. And you were 14. Was that your first business transaction?
That was my first business transaction that actually gave me that sort of entrepreneurial spark in the eye, so to speak. Previous to that, I tried other things that didn't actually make money. And then when I came to UK, I got into just earning money however I could, to start off with. I was doing a lot of catering and, working on the building site. And I quickly learned that that was extremely hard work and extremely low pay. And even at the ages of 16, I pretty much like hated it, but I needed that painful lesson to kind of say, well, okay, I now have a reference of what I don't want to be doing, and also appreciation for money, because when you're digging trenches in a building site for an hour and you get £2.50 for that, you really appreciate each pound. And so, I studied computer science and business management. I was always a, keen learner and like to learn about all sorts of different things, including architecture, ancient history, maths, sciences of all sorts. And so I even started programming back in Bosnia when I was 9, because a lot of Bosnian people and people from that region where also Nikola Tesla originates from, we're good with maths and these kind of core sciences. So we kind of take to computers as like ducks to water. And so I learned programming early on and follow that passion ever since then, and actually really educated and certified and qualified myself in the area of computer science and business management, which then led me into setting up my own business here, which I did 15 years ago. And ever since then, I never looked back, always run my own company and always worked on, increasing the impact that I can make with my business and with myself. It all kind of starts with self, because, if we don't wake up with that laugh that you started off with every day, in some sense, universe is a giant joke, so you have to be able to laugh it off, and then get down to some quote unquote serious, work to make an impact. And then if you're making an impact, people will be willing to pay you, but you have to be also willing to recognize your own value, because just like God created me, God created you, and we're all very, very valuable.
Okay, when you've obviously figured out that you could make money and you can be an entrepreneur, how long did it take for you to put the two things together and begin to be very successful? Did you go to college or did you give up on that early in the game?
Today I'm 38 now, and I've always been a very avid learner, and I would be learning copious amounts of things that I often didn't know, like why I was learning them. Like in Bosnia during the war, there was no electricity, so we were kind of often just sitting under a candlelight. And I'd picked up this like massive collection of books that were intended for university studies, and they were on the topic of history of arts. And then I read through every single book, page by page, from beginning to the end. So I learned inside out the stories of ancient grandmasters of painting, such as, Da Vinci, Van Gogh, Sandro Botticelli, Michelangelo, and so on. And then when I came to London, I started seeing those pictures that I'd only read about in galleries right in front of me. And I could actually explain to people that I was going to galleries with how each one of those pictures came to life and why each artist drew them and what each picture potentially meant. And people would be just kind of looking at me like in amazement, like, how can I at the age of 15 know each one of the pictures in the gallery and its kind of background? But to me, that was kind of normal. And I very early on sensed that being knowledgeable is valuable. Knowledge is power in a sense, right? And knowledge is certainly monetizable. And nowadays, it's actually formally recognized that, you know, the people who get paid the most in the world are what's known as knowledge workers. You know, people who are actually thinking and thinking ahead of where the kind of crowd is at. You know, your regular people that are living kind of who are struggling are typically consumers, right? And the people who are succeeding are producers. Okay, and so that's an important thing to recognize. And you know, the produce you're right now you're producing this piece of content along with me, and that content is valuable to people, and there is no shame in eventually also asking for money from people to you know, give them some more specific things that might be helpful to them. Because right now we're talking more about me. I don't really particularly like to speak about myself, but I realize that sometimes telling my story gets to become a little bit of an inspiration for somebody else who might be watching somewhere in a refugee camp in God knows where. You know, there's still lots of refugees, and you know, if they're watching this and they can know that I made money on cigarettes when I was 14, maybe they can also, you know, understand that they're also, if they keep learning and realize things and gain wisdom, they can certainly monetize that. And there's many successful American you know, refugees that have now become billionaires, like the guy, I forgot his name now, but the guy who started the Chobani yogurt brand that's very famous in America now. So yeah.
I didn't know that. I never knew that he had been a refugee at some point.
Yeah. So he's pretty recently come from, and I'll tell you now, just quickly googling it up while we're on here. It's Hamdi Ulukaya, his name is Hamdi Ulukaya, and he still lives in upstate New York, in that kind of bad bit of New York. He hasn't moved out of there. His net worth is 2.1 billion US dollars, billion with a B. So yeah, and he's 46 years of age, right? He came to US as a refugee, and you know, he gave out 10% of his company to all his employees, you know, and said, you know, you helped me build this effectively empire, and you deserve 10% of this, just like that. You know, here's your shares of the company.
I remember hearing about that. That's
Yeah,
really quite amazing.
exactly.
Now, you told me just recently it became easy for you to ask for money. What was that shift, and when did it start?
Well, so in some sense, maybe comparatively to other people, I've always had some sort of self sense of self-worth. Okay, but at the same time, you know, you if you want to progress beyond certain point, for example, in UK, you can Google up these statistics. You know, nowadays we live in this kind of sea of data and insights. So potentially, if you're earning something like £75,000 in UK, you're already in one of the in 1% of the top earners in the whole of UK. And UK is like a seventh strongest economy in the world or something like that. So even though it's a relatively small country, it's very powerful. So 75K in London, you're 1% of earners. So it's kind of, at that point you could just say, well, you know, I've made it, I'm successful, and I can just kind of sit and watch TV and, you know, bask in my own success. But then beyond that, you got to, you know, start thinking really about beyond success. What's beyond success? And beyond success is something like radical service to humanity, at which point you can realize that you need way beyond 75K to actually be able to make an impact on society and humanity at large. And you've got to be able to hold that cash flow and be responsible for it, and not just kind of you know, gamble it away in casinos and you know, throw it down the river on drugs and alcohol, right, which is an easy thing to do, but actually to channel it into good causes and create a legacy and live a life of purpose where you can actually impact on people like Hamdi Ulukaya did with Chobani yogurt and so on. So you have to then really increase your personal self-worth, to the point where, you know, handling those kind of cash flows is completely normal, right?
Okay. Now you came, you know, this is where I have trouble. When did you come to the point that you said, okay, I don't see anything bad about earning money, and I'm just going to go ahead and ask for it? This has been a problem all my life.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to do it easily.
So it's like this. Nowadays, I coach a lot of people through this Fresh Mind program, and you'd be amazed how many conflations in the mind people have around money. Because first of all, they don't understand what money is and how it works, and effectively they can't really sort of grasp the notion of money because it's a somewhat abstract concept. But at the same time, they also have lots of negative beliefs around money, which have been instilled into them, literally into their DNA, into their body. Okay, it's like embodied beliefs around money is evil, or that money is scarce, there isn't enough money to go around for all of us, or money is only obtained through hard work, or all those kind of beliefs where you know, people who have money are like the devils and satans and shaitans and so on. And that money, you know, it's like there's even rap songs, you know, more money, more problems. You know, there's all those kind of negative beliefs around that, and also shame around money. Okay, so, you know, if I was making my money through selling arms, child labor, profiteering, racketeering, all those kind of things, I'd probably feel shame and would have lots of problems because there would be lots of people after me. But I've never made money that way. Even when I was, you know, stumbled into that, like selling cigarettes to refugees, at that point, that made them happy. So I didn't kind of like, you know, intend to hurt anyone, even though I wouldn't recommend anyone be smoking cigarettes or smoking anything for that matter. But you know, it was a learning lesson that even such a silly thing like a cigarette can make people happy. Okay. But there is very, very sort of wise ways to make money, and clean money, you know, and conscious money, let's call it. And that is through helping people become smarter, become more independent, become more impactful, you know, working towards a purpose aligned with, you know, higher level of values and integrity, right? And so there is nothing shameful about that. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's actually something that I would very much encourage everyone to do. So whenever people have those limiting beliefs and negative beliefs, it's really, in some people's cases, decades and decades of hearing the same old program. And it's literally like, you know, if I program a computer and say to the program, to the actual software, that money is evil, and that program runs and runs, the software is going to continue churning out the results of that code. Now, if you remove that code out of human mind, and human mind is a bit like a quantum computer, if you remove that program that money is evil and install a program that money can actually and does redesign humanity, what you get is redesigned humanity, which is what my mission is in life.
At what age did you come to this understanding?
So I've always, you know, like in socialism, there was in socialist Yugoslavia, there was a bit of like people who run their own businesses were kind of a little bit looked at as in like, oh, they're the profiteers, right? They're the business profiteers. But I was always kind of a person who would be consciously observing what's going on. So my parents were working in the company and they were earning their regular salary, and and we had an okay life, okay life. But I always remember them talking about, oh, we've got this credit that we need to pay off, we've got these bills, we've got those bills, be careful, there's like this much money and we have to stretch it over so long of a period of time, and hopefully, God willing, nothing's going to happen, so we don't have some extra bill that comes in, because if we do, then we're going to go into some negative debt and so on. Whereas even people like my uncle, who was running his own company, he always had a lot more abundant lifestyle. So I was able to observe that and go, hold on a second, whatever my uncle is doing, they have a lot more comfortable life than we are. All I'm hearing in my house for most part is watch out, there isn't that much money. And I never hear that in my uncle's house. And he's always happy, chirpy, smiley, bubbly, and so on. And so I always kind of took an eye out on that. Similar to my other uncle from my dad's side, he was running his own barber shop, and then he had also a corner shop. And between those two things, they were running almost like they were like the center point in the village that my dad is from. And he would used to say, and this always stuck in my mind, and remember, I've learned a lot from like all the people, wisdom of the ancestors, where my dad was quite full of fear in his life. So he looked up to his older brother quite a bit. And he would say, brother, what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen if the economy goes down? And my uncle would reply to my dad, don't worry, millions of people have to die of starvation before we feel anything, right? And that's because he was a guy who was entrepreneurial, and the entire village knew of him and was coming there to cut their hair and buying, bread and milk and all that stuff. And there were loads of people who took away goods and never paid, and they would kind of write a little kind of like IOUs in the book, and some people never paid off, but that's fine, and it's still okay.
That's interesting. And it really hit me hard, because in my family, there was always that, and my father did very well as an orthodontist. I mean, the family did do well. But my mother always had, what happens if you don't have money now, or, blah, blah, blah. And it was something I grew up thinking, and now I'm at that spot where I got to get some money. And I, in every other way, I'm fine with my life. But that fear still exists. What do I do? How do I change that mindset? I'm working very diligently to do that. I'm doing the mindset journey, and actually I post something every day, what have I learned today? But how do you change that mindset to a more, I know that faith is necessary here, because everything does happen. Everything kind of works itself out, although at the moment it may seem, oh no.
Yeah. So there are ways of reframing money in different ways, and reframing here is the idea that depending on how you describe something, you have a different relationship with that thing. Okay, so often the time, we'd say to little children, when they don't want to eat their vegetables and so on, we'd say to them, oh, eat your broccoli. It's really going to give you strong bones. And then you might be like an amazing tennis player, right? It's a little bit of motivation around that. But then that broccoli is no longer this kind of yucky, green vegetable. It's a kind of like an empowerment, food, like a superfood that builds champions. And so everyone wants to be a champion deep down, and they then, say, okay, well, I'm going to eat this. And maybe, it's not maybe, but it's actually, if you perceive something as championship food, then you'll want more of that. It will even taste better, because our mind works as a transmutation engine that converts the cosmic energy into whatever is that we imagine. And so transmutation is just a converting one type of energy into another. And so if you reframe money, so for example, you might know, for example, that money doesn't matter. Okay, it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really impact on my happiness, because my happiness comes from within. So the money doesn't matter to me, but you know who it matters to? It matters to the gas company that keeps sending me the electricity and gas bills. They really want some money every month. So it doesn't matter to me, but it matters to them. So I want to keep them happy and, away from my house. So, I'm then going to say, well, I'm going to make as much money as I possibly can, because it really doesn't matter to me, right? And once I keep the bills at bay, then everything else that's remaining, I can then channel and transmute further into good causes. And it's really about looking at money from a different perspective. Sometimes if you're an artist or inclined towards artistry, you can look at money as a clay, a building block for your artworks, right? And sometimes I'd say life in itself is an artwork, and this helps, to say that like when Michelangelo created David, right, which is here in London in Victoria and Albert Museum, he made them out of stone, and he needed money to make that statue, right? Even though it's a piece of stone where he removed every bit of the stone that isn't David, right? He took a big block and removed everything that isn't David. So you have to do that with your mind as well. You've got to remove everything that isn't useful for you and keep the good stuff. And the tricky thing here is that sometimes we're not even conscious of this. It's literally in our subconscious. So if I put this here, it's like you've got subconscious mind and you've got your conscious mind. It's more like this. It's up here. You've got about 5% conscious of what's going on in your like quantum computer in your head, and 95% unconscious. So all these kind of negative beliefs live in this kind of subconscious mind, where you kind of think you can't really easily reach into there consciously. So that's why a lot of the time people try things like meditation and so on, but that's why we designed Fresh Mind, to kind of get into all that subconscious mind and dig out all the kind of, bits of coal and dirt and just chuck that out. What you're left with is absolute clarity of mind, and then you just really manifest that money without any kind of qualms about it.
Can you teach me how to
So one way, sometimes people there's an exercise that I can recommend as a bit of a tip, and this is from a very good dear friend of mine called Jamie Cato. And what he would do is he would get people to write down all the negative things that they're feeling and believing, right? So you write a list of negative things, and then you write a list of negative things on this side of the paper, right? And then on this side of the line of the paper, you write exact opposites of those negative things. And that list on this side here becomes your to-do list of what you should be doing. Okay.
Okay.
So try that, all the kind of negative things that you're thinking, either about yourself or about things that you kind of know, like, do you pay for your electricity bill with love?
I've never thought about that.
Well,
I pay my condo fee every month. I pay my cell phone bill. I pay my car bill, and I'm like,
but do you pay for that? Do you pay for that with love?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, you pay for that with money, right? So you need money to pay your bills. And, that's what every single human on the planet is under that condition, And, it's very, it's a gift. Tesla, who is a neighbor of ours, from Croatia, he invented electricity for all of us, down in US, okay, or up in US, depending how you want to point. There's no real up and down, but so he went from Croatia to US also as a refugee of a sort, or an immigrant, and then basically lit up the world. And now, we pay a little bit of money for electricity, but that electricity is enabling this conversation, right? And, otherwise we would have been still sitting under candlelight, and be living like, cavemen, in most cases. So, we're extremely blessed and privileged to have, housing and roof over our heads and heating and so on. And often the time, there is a tendency in human mind, and this is the ego reflex, to not be appreciative for what we've got. And once we start appreciating, even starting from breath, the breath of life, appreciating every breath, what tends to happen is you generate more of that upward spiral, and then it becomes more and more comfortable and normal to accumulate more of that art material that you create your art of life with, and money is one of those materials.
I really want to do a series on this where you are teaching,
sure.
But not, I want to do it regularly, because
sure.
I think that it's not just something for me, but it's for everyone watching, because people miss this. I know I do. I mean, I have days where I'm like, am I going to eat? And of course, things work out. And I should know that, but I don't always know it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to change that.
Yeah. There is a book that I can recommend to absolutely everyone. Really, it's a book that's quite changed my life, and it's available on YouTube for free. So if you Google this up, it's called "Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence." It's a little bit of a mouthful.
Put that in the chat.
So it's ultimate. I'll write it in the comment on Facebook, but I'll just say it once more slowly. Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence, and it's available for free on YouTube. It's a relatively old book from 80s, but still very much powerful. It's to do with mindset and empowering the power of our minds, right? And there are lots of little tidbits around money, and certainly confidence and self-confidence, that the author talks about. But it's incredible how we have been effectively programmed into a bunch of things like suffering, slavery. Okay, so somebody who is like working, for example, in a 9-to-5 job in some factory is effectively like a form of a willing slave these days, because they're getting paid so little for such arduous work. It's basically like legal slavery. But because we've been conditioned into suffering, and that sort of willing slavery, we've then kind of further to that tended to condition ourselves into enjoying that slavery and suffering. So it's a
Right.
really kind of a weird and twisted thing that our minds does to us, or our mind does to us, which is to get us to enjoy our own suffering. And then when you start enjoying that suffering, it's tricky to actually go, hold on a second, I want to stop enjoying the suffering and start enjoying not suffering. Okay.
And
Uh,
that's why
yeah. And so, and if I say that to people, this can be delivered as a very sort of crude, direct truth statement, which is you're enjoying your suffering. Then people say, no, I'm not, blah, blah, blah. But that comes from that 5% conscious mind. When you look into the unconscious, that the kind of habit has been built around sort of, it's almost like you get a little kick around, will I eat today, or won't I eat today? Where will I eat from? Who will give me a sandwich, or and so on. And there's a sort of an element. It's a bit of a kind of sick and twisted thing in some sense, but there is an element of excitement in that. And I've certainly felt alive, for example, in a refugee camp in Croatia. I felt alive because it was like, whoa, this is like some sort of adventure that I've only seen so far in movies, and we're right in it now. And as a 14-year-old boy, I saw that as a sort of excitement to start off with. But then eventually it kind of became more and more of a burden. And I started realizing, hold on a second, this is no longer exciting. This is really just, I'm getting bored of this and not really enjoying it. But I had that inner drive and propensity to kind of dig my way out of that. And so really it's about changing those negative things into positives, and then sticking to the positives, and really holding, first of all, yourself accountable to effectively bettering your own life. And then it does help to be hanging around with people who will effectively give you, what I'm telling you here is the truth, right? Because when people talk about there is like oppression going on from super rich who have enslaved the poor, it's more like the poor have bought in to the slave mentality. Okay, and no one's really forcing us at a gunpoint to struggle and suffer. But because we've been doing that for so long, we've kind of habituated ourselves into that. And one of the first chapters in this book of Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence is called dehypnotizing yourself. So you've effectively been hypnotized into this suffering slave mentality. And you've got to remove that hypnosis to actually go, hold on a second, I can also be like Hamdi Ulukaya and become, if I want to, worth $2.1 billion net. And nobody is going to attack me for it, because why? I made that money while helping other people and not while oppressing others. That's why you see certain people who are multi-billionaires, they still need this kind of like armed guards around them all the time, because they know they made money the wrong way and a bad way, and they know there's a lot of people after them, right? So they need a big bill to spend on bodyguards and so on.
whereas what I am doing is helping people.
Yeah, of course.
There is no reason why I am in this, I hate to say it, slave mentality, or this mentality that I don't beg, but in a way I do beg, because I'm not allowing myself to shine.
Yeah. So I give you one statement from, for example, this book, okay, from Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence, where he mentions slavery, okay? And this guy that wrote this, Robert Anthony, is actually a psychologist. So he's a PhD psychologist. So he says in this one sentence, physical slavery is a punishable crime, but far worse is mental slavery, for the punishment is, as Decrites put it so well, a life of quiet desperation. And this is something also that what's his name, the Jamaican reggae singer Bob Marley,
Yeah.
said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Right.
And you've learned that over the years, and I've learned that as well. Because in Yugoslavia we're told, just be there. Like Tito, the president of Yugoslavia, was an owner of 2 Mercedes limousines that Mercedes-Benz produced 7 of. Okay, so Tito had 2, and he was the only president in the world that had 2 of those Mercedes limos that were like arm bulletproof, super luxury. He had 2 of those. Mercedes had 1. I think Gaddafi had 1. One of the American presidents had 1, but Tito had 2. Tito was one of the richest presidents in the history of history. He was dancing with the Queen of England at the time, but he was telling the people of Yugoslavia, just stay there, stay there. Don't strive to go there, just stay there, while he was up there. Don't do as Tito says, do as Tito does. Okay.
So in other words, what came to me in my mind as you were talking is that we keep ourselves at any level because of how we're thinking.
Exactly.
And the change in our mindset that will change all of this from
Exactly.
moving on.
And, when I first read The Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence book, it was a shock to me. I've never read anything in my life where every single page that I read, it was like somebody was just giving me like a smack on the head, like this and like that and like this. And, but it was such a mind-changing book, okay? Because everything he writes in there is true. And one of the statements that he has in there is that he says, at any one point in time, you are doing your best. Okay, so you can imagine that if you are this, let's say, it's a kind of like, these are metaphors, okay, so don't take this literally, but if you, as in your mindset and your capacity is as big as this card, okay, and the card has got the cash flow capacity, or throughput, or current in it of, let's say, $10, and your mind is worth $10, this mind has the capacity of making $10 per month, per whatever. The only way to make more is to increase your mind. Okay, you got to make your mind bigger. So now you got $20, and as you expand yourself and increase your mind further, now you got $30, and so on. Okay, so what he says is you're always doing your best, and your best is dependent and directly related to the level of self-awareness that you're at. So as you increase your self-awareness and become aware of these kind of things that, presidents and leaders will often tell us, you need to pay higher taxes, you need to, calm down a bit, just wait, and we'll fly in private jets. Okay. If you're buying that narrative, you're being fed lies downwards,
Right.
and you're buying the lies, and lies do not give you a good life. I do not recommend living by lies. I recommend living by truth, and that truth comes from your soul. You know deep down what you're worth, and you also know that it's okay to ask for money from people that you've helped. Deep down, you know this.
Deep down, I do know it.
Yeah,
I just need to bring it up.
Exactly.
But it must be coming up for me to be able to say that to you.
Exactly. And so, there's like, with all due respect, this is how I relate to people like yourself. I call people like yourself tribal elders. Okay. You're the wisdom keepers, right? You're the people who have brought us into the world, right? And, so there's a kind of crude statement that would say you can't teach old dog new tricks, which is nonsense, because it's not that I'm teaching you anything. You're teaching yourself everything, and it's just a question of whether you're willing to accept something as truth, or you're going to be denying the truth and stick to the lies, right? This is why there is a lie in belief. Any belief is laden with lie inside. Okay. So you drop these beliefs, what you're left with is actual wisdom, knowledge, fact, truth, and that generates cash flow.
We need to keep this going. We have been on here for almost an hour now, which is way above the amount of time
I think this is possibly a good time to call it a day for this particular episode. There is a lot. There's a lot to be said about this, and the kind of the money mechanics, so to speak, right? Or money magic, or money mastery, or money movements, right? And motion and so on. And it's a fantastic subject, because oftentimes I'd say to people, especially people living in capitalist systems, the core word of capitalism is capital, and the core measure for capital is usually money. So you're living in capitalism, but you're frowning upon capital. Yet, so this is the other thing, that people are more willing to be beggar for money than say, hey, how about I give you this thing worth 50 cents for 30 cents. I made this and I'll give it to you for 30 cents. So you're getting 20 cents extra for on top of what I'm asking you for. So you should be happy. And I will utilize the 30 cents for what I need, which may be food and so on and so forth, right? And you do that over and over and over and over again. And you can certainly create a life of some sort of normality, if not, push through to abundance and so on. And also we live in a very kind of strange time where, I'm speaking to you and I'm theoretically, I'm originally from a country that's been through war and through famine and through oppression, murder, genocide, torture, all these kind of things. And I am teaching you in America, in Washington, about capitalism, right? And so it's a funny old world. It's a funny old world.
It is. With that, I'm going to end the show now. I want you to stay for a moment so
Okay.
we can
Thank you.
schedule this. But thank you so much, Jason. I really, you added a lot to my head.
Thank you. And I'll share the link to Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence in the Facebook live stream. So check it out there, or just do a YouTube search. And this is the other amazing thing. There's so much wonderful material on money out there, but people nowadays are not even willing to do a Google search for that, let alone.
Now you sound like Rehan talking to me. But he's right. That's something I need. I really need to change. With that, I want to thank you for being here. We are sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization creating peace with one conversation at a time. And this has been a very dynamic conversation. I'm very grateful for it. And Jason and I are going to do a series. I don't know how often or when yet, but everyone's going to learn how to become affluent financially if you listen to Jason and learn. Have a great night, people. We're going to go out with a little laughter, and it's been great talking to you, Jason. Bye.
Thank you so much.